Even with all the 10 or 11 care in the world, building bigger biceps is no easy feat, and it's a much slower process than most people perceive it to be. But if you're serious about maximizing and prioritizing your biceps growth, then there are a few strategies that we can employ that research has shown will be able to significantly speed up its growth. In this video, I'll go through exactly what these strategies are and how to employ them so that in the next 8 weeks of your training, you can get the most biceps gains as possible, even with just a set of dumbbells. I guarantee that even if you're a non-responder or just haven't been seeing much results with your current biceps regimen, that implementing this plan will result in a ton of new growth for your biceps or any muscle that you apply these strategies to. The first and most important thing we'll want to do is start adjusting our weekly biceps volume. More specifically, since we know based on the past work of researchers Brad Schoenfeld and James Krieger that there's a dose-response relationship between weekly volume and muscle growth, we'll want to simply increase our weekly biceps volume to stimulate more growth. This is especially effective in the event that you've reached a plateau and your biceps just aren't responding to your current biceps volume. However, this does not mean that you should simply do as much volume as possible and absolutely annihilate your biceps every single workout, as that can do more harm than good. Instead, we need to take a strategic approach to this based on the research. First off, in terms of how much to increase your weekly biceps volume to, it seems that we may be able to get as high as 30 sets per week while still seeing a benefit in growth. For instance, one very well-controlled 2015 paper compared the effect of performing either 6, 18, or 30 weekly bicep sets on 48 untrained men over the course of 6 months. As shown in the following graph, there was a clear dose-response effect in terms of volume and resulting biceps growth, with a 30 weekly set group experiencing growth that was on average 3 to 4 times what's typically seen in the research. And then this study design was then repeated on trained men by Brad Schoenfeld and colleagues in 2019, which showed similar results in biceps growth. And in fact, in the highest volume condition, there were no non-responders compared to over half of subjects being non-responders in the lowest volume condition. Now, this doesn't mean that you should throw in 30 sets of biceps into a workout and do that once a week, because we also need to be aware of another important finding based on the work of researcher James Krieger, which is that there seems to be a per session volume limit of about 8 to 10 sets per muscle, meaning that within each workout, you don't want to perform more than about 8 to 10 hard sets per muscle, as beyond that tends to just become junk volume and less effective for hypertrophy. So, knowing that, we want to split up our weekly biceps volume into 2 to 3 workouts per week to stay within that per session limit. What I personally recommend is to use something like the following upper-lower split or a push-pull leg split, and then distribute your weekly biceps volume accordingly. Once you have that set, slowly increase your weekly volume throughout the weeks, similar to the methods popularized by Dr. Mike Israetel. So, for instance, start week 1 with about 10 sets for your biceps per week, and then from weeks 1 to 8, increase this slowly by adding about 2 to 4 weekly sets every week or so, up to about 20 to 30 weekly sets, as long as you're recovering and progressing well, which will be highly individual. By the end of the 8 weeks, you should be doing a considerable amount of weekly biceps volume and feeling quite fatigued, and can then take a deload week to recover and finish off the cycle. Do also keep in mind that the pulling work that you do for your back, such as pull-ups and rows, should also be counted towards your weekly bicep sets, as those will heavily involve the biceps as well. Next, you want to manage your recovery and actually bias it to favor your biceps growth throughout this period. Just like our biceps, all of the other muscle groups we train require energy, effort, and nutrients to recover and grow. So if our main goal is to increase the size of our biceps, it's likely a good idea to reduce the volume that we devote to our other muscle groups so that our body can favor our performance, our recovery, and our growth towards our biceps that we're going to be training with quite a bit of volume. In fact, we can reduce the volume we dedicate to our other muscle groups down to just enough to maintain their size or stimulate a little bit of growth in them throughout the weeks. As for exactly how many sets this was going to require, multiple papers have shown that cutting volume down to about 9 weekly sets seems to be enough to maintain, or in some instances, even grow a muscle, and is therefore a good recommendation to stick to. So for muscle groups like your legs, your chest, your back, and your shoulders, allocating around just 9 or so weekly sets to each of them would be a good idea if you really wanted to favor the recovery and growth of your biceps. And for example, this could look something like the following weekly routine for chest, where you'd simply do 3 exercises a week with 3 working sets for each exercise. Next, we want to ensure that the weekly volume that we do for our biceps has the right variety of exercises. We want to do this so that it helps 1, ensure that we are targeting both the short and long head of the biceps adequately. 2, trains the biceps through different strength curves in order to maximally stimulate all of the various regions and fibers of the biceps. And 3, it'll better prevent us from overuse injuries and the wear and tear that would accumulate very quickly if we packed a ton of volume into just a couple repetitive movements. To simplify this, here are 5 biceps exercises that do just that and provide a good variety of stimulus on the biceps for the reasons I've noted down. Simply distribute 4 or 5 of these movements and or similar variations of them into your weekly biceps workouts as needed, and then, as previously explained, gradually increase the sets you devote to each of these exercises throughout the weeks to accumulate more and more weekly biceps volume. Next, we want to manipulate the order of our workouts to again favor the growth of our biceps. Multiple papers have shown that lifters get better strength gains in exercises that are done early in a session, with a trend for better growth in those exercises as well, which makes sense. After a back workout, for example, by the time I'm done with those back movements, I can barely shake my post-workout protein, let alone have enough energy to then hammer out some biceps work. So, during whatever workouts that you're throwing your biceps exercises into, move them to the beginning of the workout when you're fresh in order to further prioritize them. Lastly is nutrition. Ideally, if you want to maximize your recovery and growth throughout these 8 weeks, then you'll want to be eating at a slight calorie surplus. While it is possible to grow muscle while in a calorie deficit, it's much more difficult to do and will be slower since protein synthesis reduces significantly whenever we're in a deficit. So unless you'd still really like to prioritize fat loss throughout these 8 weeks, stick with a small calorie surplus, or at least enough calories such that you're recovering and progressing well throughout the weeks. And of course, even more importantly, is we want to ensure that we're intaking enough protein throughout this period by having at least around 0.8 to 1 grams of protein per pound of our body weight. Otherwise, we'll be sabotaging much of the effort that's going into our workouts. And that's basically all there is to it. And I know this can be a lot of information to take in at once, so for your convenience, I've combined all of this information into a free 8-week template that you can download and incorporate into your routine right away. It'll break down exactly how to set up your workout split, what biceps exercises to use, and how to progress them throughout the 8 weeks with more volume. To grab a copy of this, you can just head on over to builtwithscience.com/biceps template, and I'll send it right over to you. And I'll also leave a link to this in the description box down below. But also keep in mind that your nutrition throughout this period and during your training in general will always be the most important factor to building muscle and losing fat. That's why within my science-based programs, in addition to the step-by-step training plans that you'll receive, I've also created a nutrition tracker that'll do all the guesswork for you and show you what to eat, how much to eat, and how to adjust this over time to avoid reaching plateaus. To gain access today, just head on over to builtwithscience.com and take our analysis quiz to discover the best approach for you and your specific body. Anyways, that is it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, found it useful. Please don't forget to show your support by giving the video a like, leaving a comment down below as to what you'd like to see me cover next, subscribing to the channel, and turning on notifications for the channel as well. This all really does help me out. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you next time.